what was your motivation to participate in today's panel discussion?
Well, Holly Lintner actually Facebooked me and said, "Hey, would you like to do a panel?" And she told me some of the other people who are going to be on there. Bill Hennessy, who I know, and I work with him a little bit on the Tea Party, and Mary, I can't remember her last name, but she's from Southern Illinois. And so I thought it was a great opportunity for me to speak out about issues having to do with the pachyderm's conservatism and some of my own pet projects, which number one is education.
Okay. And you had mentioned something about being a too high. Okay.
No, just when you ask the question,
Oh,
what you do.
oh, okay.
Oh.
You mentioned about being a conservative, and you kind of defining yourself as a conservative. Can you expound on that a little bit and how that relates to what you're doing with the Tea Party?
Well, being a conservative is more a values-driven thing for me. I look at what I believe in, how I'd like to see my life affected by the federal government and by the local and state government, and then I look at the platform of the Democratic Party, and I see a lot of intrusion and invasion and control on that side, and a lot of them trying to legislate and decide small, just everyday decisions on my behalf through legislators who I may or may not ever meet. And then on the conservative side, I just see them saying to me, "I trust you. I think you can do a great job on your own. Sink or swim, fail or succeed. It's all going to be on you, and have at it. And the federal government will be there to support and defend the Constitution, to provide a military, to provide for the common defense, to pave roads and operate school buildings and things like that, but not the local small decisions that I feel like are my everyday purview, and the lower tax burden, and you know pro-life and things like that. Those are all things that are integral to who I am, that I think the Republicans and the conservative movement specifically, because it doesn't have to be the Republicans, it has to be conservatism first. Those things are embodied there. And so that's what drew me to it years ago, my husband and I, and that's where we are today.
So someone mentioned the issue of being a closet conservative, and you didn't bring it up. I think Bill or someone else did. But does that apply to you at all in terms of your career and as your identity?
Well, I think maybe I was at some point a closet conservative because I didn't really talk about it. I just voted it, and I'd come out per se to my family and to some close friends, and their reactions were kind of negative, and so I wasn't out advertising it or wearing shirts saying, "Hey, I'm a conservative," or "Hey, I'm a Republican," but I knew deep down that's where I was, and my husband and I were the same in that respect. But I think I've come out more recently because, number one, I've had to, because being on school board, people want to know, even though it's nonpartisan, they're concerned that you might be an extremist, which I guess I am. And then on the other hand, um, I feel like I had to come out and be more active because of where our country is today and the president that we have, that I can no longer afford to be a part of the silent majority and just kind of vote my conscience. I have to actually be out there talking about it so that people can see, guess what, conservatives look like all of us. It's not just old white people who are conservatives. It's a whole range of Americans, and they're represented by conservatism very well.
Um, some people are talking about the changes in the Republican Party, and they're talking about the Tea Party's impact. And it was mentioned that it's no longer a party, or should not be a party, that comes from the top down, but comes from the grassroots and goes up towards the party. If you're in the audience today, your comments and maybe some of the other comments of panelists, what do you think you all kind of brought to the table to kind of describe that process, or what is it if you're trying to reach out to people through the new media or to minority groups or some of the minority groups within the Republican Party? How do you think they benefited from today's panel discussion?
Well, what I heard today was that there are some establishment Republicans who are concerned about the Tea Party maybe kind of coming in and changing what the Republican Party is. And the Tea Party was expressing their desire to be a part of a movement, not necessarily the Republican Party. So they're wanting to affect change and get our country back on track, and they're not necessarily saying they need the Republican Party to do that. They're operating at the grassroots level. The impact that has had on the national scene and locally is that a lot more elections have been won because we've had more people available to knock on doors and come to meetings and inform themselves, and they have great ideas. So I see it as just two arms of the same person. The Republican establishment, which should pay attention to the fact that now people are more engaged, they're paying attention, and they want to see results. And then the grassroots, they bring that heat and that fire to the Republican Party that has perhaps been missing. And you can look at some of our elections and see that it's been kind of a tepid response nationally. And in order to get that changed, we need some fire, people with a fire in their belly, which it's the Tea Party that has that right now. What I heard on the panel today is that it sounds like a vibrant organization to me. When you have a group of people who have fire in their belly, you have a group of people who, their establishment, they know the ropes, they know how the system works, they're able to, if we can harness that and bring everyone together, we're going to win more elections. And that's the number one goal, I think, of all of the people who are working. They want to see the country improved, and the way to do that is through policy. And in order to affect policy, you have to elect people who believe what you believe. So.
You mentioned that you've a lot of your interest has to do with education as an issue, and you mentioned Turner versus v. Clayton. Could you expound a little bit about your background in education and how that's an issue that you think is important, for the Republican Party?
Well, my background in education is that I'm an Air Force veteran. I'm a school board member. I'm a stay-at-home mom for about 12 years now. So my interest in the Turner v. Clayton ruling stems from, number one, I'm a parent in a suburban district, so I would be a receiving district of those unaccredited students who now have the option to attend any school. As a school board member, I'm concerned about that because I have a finite budget, which revenue is down because the economy is bad and property values are down, and we are primarily funded through our local tax revenue through property tax, commercial and residential, where some of the rural districts receive a large portion of their budget from the state. We receive 1 to 2%, I think it is. So that means revenue stream-wise, I am opposed to receiving students where I'm unsure if their funding is going to precede them, and where I may have to build buildings and hire on new teachers to support those students. I'm also personally opposed to students being bused and going out to accredited districts because it takes away the local neighborhood school, which is what my children have, and it's been very successful for our district. That brings me to the issue that the Republican Party right now, I see it as a golden egg. The Republican Party has a majority in the House and the Senate, and if they can organize themselves around this issue and offer vouchers to city students, those parents are going to forever be indebted to the Republican Party. The Democrats have done nothing for them for 50 years. This is a one-time shot, I think. If we lose our majorities, then it's not an issue. We can't discuss it because we can't do anything about it. But right now, while we have that majority, we need our legislators to organize around it, get the buy-in from the rural legislators, and enact some legislation that will give vouchers to students, number one, in this unaccredited districts. This is not open enrollment that I'm advocating. I'm advocating vouchers for city students and students in unaccredited districts. I'm advocating for, and this is most important, an amendment to the Missouri Constitution which would allow public dollars to flow to any institution the parent would like, which could be a cost savings for the state on education. And then lastly, that they would take this issue and then parlay it into a public relations message that says, we are the conservatives, and this is what we offer to you in our party. It's school choice for you if you don't have an accredited school district for your children. It's an education for your children. This isn't a racist issue. This isn't a socioeconomic issue. It's an issue of you living in an area with an unaccredited school district, and we want to do something about it for you. And oh, by the way, we're the Republicans.
So essentially, how does a how am I going to phrase this question? I can't really phrase the question the way I want to phrase it. Basically, what I'm trying to ask you is how can the party help to reach out to minorities who might be conservative, basically, but how do they help? First of all, how do they identify themselves? I mean, I guess how do they get access to get involved in the process? You did it through getting through the military initially, then you got involved in the school board. I guess I'm looking for how does the Pachyderms, through all these different parties, how do they reach out to African Americans and give them a way to work themselves into the organization? Because I think a lot of people. I think minorities or not look at a party like the Republican Party, and they do see just white, old white guys or whatever. So, how can Pachyderms, or how can what we're doing here at this meeting, how can that reach out to minorities and give them an opportunity to get involved in this process for 2012?
Well, I mean, I just came to a Pachyderm luncheon, loved the speaker, loved the food, started coming. They asked me to join the club. They kept saying, "We really like having you come, join the club." It was a welcoming environment for me. I think for the Pachyderm organization moving forward, we should be looking at using social media to connect with Black conservatives by finding those groups of Black conservatives first, because we'll connect with our own. They're conservatives, Pachyderms is conservative, and cross-networking, cross-pollinating, inviting them to speak at our clubs, seeing if we can go speak at any events that they're having, send a Pachyderm to talk about pachyderms and what we've been able to do and how we're trying to grow. Getting a button from a social networking site for conservatives and moderates and putting it on the Pachyderm website, and then say, hey, take our Pachyderm button and put it on your website. You know, we have a great meeting. It's got to be something that someone would be excited about coming to, which usually involves fellowshipping and food. So, you know, hey, come on out and join us and see what we're all about. We would love to have you. Most people find it hard to say no to someone who says, we'd love to have you come out, you know, just once. And that's how you get them hooked. If the food's good and the company's good, they're probably going to think, oh, okay, I could probably come to that again and again. And you're right, the conservatives are out there. They just need an impetus to join, because traditionally speaking, it's not a popular thing to be Black and conservative. And I think this is a systemic problem that we have as conservatives. We don't look on the national scene and in media like we really are in person, in reality, which means we need to see more Black conservatives on TV talking about being conservative, and like one of the questioners asked, making it look cool. I don't consider myself an uncool person, but being conservative is not cool. Well, that's news to me. I think it's cool, and I think I should be out there talking about it. And I think there's plenty of people who'd love to hear someone who doesn't look like themselves talk about something that they are passionate about, which is conservatism. And it will also put the lie to the mainstream media and the liberals complete. They just own the issue that the Republicans are all white and they don't care about Black people. They own it, and we need to take it back from them, and we need to own it. We don't, as conservatives, only care about Black people, but we certainly don't hate them, so why should we be portrayed that way? And it's just going to take, I think, time to get that message, you know, moving within our party, but it's so doable, and it's social media, new media, then we have mainstream media. We have so many opportunities to get this out there. We just have to put it on our to-do list and then start working at it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Bill Hennessy, I'm chairman of the St. Louis Tea Party Coalition.
Okay. Hey, Bill, what was your motivation to participate in today's panel discussion?
Well, you know, the purpose of the Tea Party movement essentially is to move the country, what you would call moving the country to the right, and that's to, you know, smaller government, government limited by the Constitution, taxes as low as possible, regulations only as necessary to promote business and get the economy moving, and what we're really rally around the debt. So any opportunity to advance those things and to find ways to help the country get over its addiction to borrowing, I'm here.
Yeah. You mentioned something about working together to get votes, and you said there was three types of people. There was those that believe, folks that don't believe, and folks in the middle. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, when the Tea Parties happened, the first ones in February and then in April of 2009, the thing I heard over and over again from people was that I had no idea there were this many people who are as angry and worried as I am. And those are the people who we all believe essentially the same things, especially on those core principles of limited government and debt and those things. So the Tea Party was first gathering of the people who believe what we believe, and we're meeting each other. Then there's a lot, you know, the other side is people who don't believe what we believe. They believe that government should have unlimited strength and size. But in between, there's a whole lot of people who believe what we believe, they just don't know it. We haven't articulated it well, or they haven't paid a lot of attention, and those are the people that we have to try to influence. That at least just tell them what we believe, and they'll come over to our side.
Someone tossed a term out, closet conservative. Can you explain what a closet conservative might be?
Well, there's social norms that in certain places where being a conservative just isn't an acceptable behavior. So there's folks who do believe what we believe. They know they believe what we believe, but they feel social pressure to hide that, to go along with the crowd. That happens a lot in schools. Even I was graduated from high school back in the '80s and to college in the early '80s, and there's a lot of pressure to keep your mouth shut if you don't agree with the administration, the staff, the faculty, and their party line.
In reaching out to all these diverse groups, minorities, and what role does social media play in the future for the Pachyderms?
Social media is huge, and as a matter of fact, I just published a book through HarperCollins on using social media for grassroots effectiveness. But the purpose of social media has to be to drive people together. The human contact is important, which is the other message. Meeting people, looking them in the eye, shaking their hand, getting to know people and trust them is the key. Social media is the best tool, our most efficient tool that we have to do that. But it has to drive people to make human connections.
So can you explain grassroots movements today utilizing social media?
Well, St. Louis Tea Party does for one quite heavily. We have a unpaid but a full-time person whose sole job is managing social media and new media to keep messages coordinated, to coordinate with other groups, to pull people together. But it's always with the human contact in mind of getting people to act in person. But you think about it if you go back 20 years ago, sending out a first-class mailing to even 1,000 people cost a fortune. There are very few organizations could do it. So an organization's ability to form and grow was limited by the money it had to communicate. Well, or you'd have a phone tree and things like that. With social media, it's completely different. With Twitter and Facebook and email and blogs, you can get both short little messages and very large like policy positions out there for free, essentially, or close to it. So it's a wonderful tool for a grassroots organization, as long as it's fulfilling its purpose of ultimately bringing it together as a community.
Well, Neil, can you just kind of state your full name and your current position, what you do in your profession, and then basically what your relationship to the Pachyderms would be?
Sure. My name's Leo Vasquez. I live in Houston, Texas. I actually work in the private sector as the executive vice president of Maximus Coffee Group. We're a big coffee manufacturer. Been very involved in Republican politics for a long time. I guess I grew up in a military family and naturally was a Republican from there, and then it was common sense, once I became an adult. So I've been very active from the local level up to the federal level in supporting different candidates.
So what made you decide to be part of this panel discussion this afternoon?
Well, again, I was asked to be on the panel because, again, I have for a number of years, probably at least 15, 20 years now, been active in trying to really sell the notion and get the point across that Republican values are Hispanic values. Family, faith, hard work, and limited government. Hey, that's completely Republican and that's completely Hispanic. And if we can help get that message across to pachyderms and regular mainstream Republicans, and they realize that we really are the same, it's prime pickings to go out and start bringing in Hispanics to the party because they're their natural home.
What can pachyderms and Republicans in general do better as a organization to include or to welcome Hispanics into the party, into their pachyderm clubs?
Well, again, in general, a Hispanic person is just like you and me, or just like you and just like me. We're all the same. Treat someone with respect, and don't be afraid to go up and talk to someone, whether if they're obviously Hispanic or African American. Just treat them normal for one. It's not like they have a contagious disease. The other big point, though, is on a daily basis, when you're having discussions amongst your peers, if you're listening to others speaking, make sure that the rhetoric is toned down and that we're not trying to, as I've used the examples before, of saying illegal aliens is one thing, but then the conversation just changes almost imperceptibly to say, oh, all the Mexicans or all the Hispanics, when really they're referring to just the illegal aliens. I know a lot of, born right here in America, Americans of Hispanic descent that take offense at being lumped in with all these illegal aliens. Make sure that that type of communication doesn't happen, and it happens imperceptibly, so you really have to be aware of it and make sure you speak up when you hear others doing it.
That kind of goes to what Bob Schultz said, where he said he told everyone to watch their language.
Yes, I mean, again, the language is important, and even the tone and the way things are said. You talk about a little kid who was brought over when they were 2 years old illegally, and you're looking at that person and calling them a hardened criminal. I mean, you use that kind of tone with the same person, sort of a mass murderer versus someone who was brought in no fault of their own. We got to be careful. Just be more cognizant of what you're saying and how you're saying it, and that can go a long way to stopping that off-putting that we're doing with a lot of Hispanics.
Why do you think the average Republican or the average American would think that Hispanics didn't belong in a Republican Party?
Just lack of information, lack of thinking it through. And it's going to hopefully be venues like this where we do get the points across. As I said, hardworking, limited government. I can tell you, Hispanics are fiscally conservative. Stay out of my business. They're businessmen and women as well, and very entrepreneurial in spirit. Again,